for me.
Maybe I can.
I understand.
I used to love to cook for Carlos. I could cook anything, and he'd eat it. And he'd swear, that's the best steak I ever ate in my life. And it'd be so damn tough you couldn't even chew it. And I would always tell him, I said, hey, go fishing with me in the morning. No, I only like the saltwater fish. He said, take Debbie. And one day I said, I'm going to take her up next time he tells me. So the next day he tells me, just go ahead and take Debbie. I asked her, she said, oh, I'd love to go. Hell, she was a better fisherman than he was an eater. She could catch more fish than he could hamburgers he could eat. And we had a great time, but he was, Carlos called him. She had to cook something for him. He was a big member of Big Mineral Executive Club. And Deborah was right on his tail. She was down here. They had a great time living here.
Is there anybody else with Deborah?
Yes.
One thing I forgot, I was going to mention this trip to 9/11. During 9/11, got stuck out there.
Saw Carl.
I am Stacy Dowd. I'm the husband of, I'm the husband. I'm the wife of Debbie's son, Shannon.
Names get mixed up in that.
What comes to my mind all the time when I think about her is the first time I ever met her. Shannon was in the hospital.
Go figure.
Yeah. And pretty much out of it. You were in a coma.
I was in a coma.
Yeah. So he couldn't do, or advocate for himself or anything. And I had never met this woman in my life. So I come up to the hospital and see what's going on. And Deborah made me feel like part of the family in like 2 seconds it seemed. And I also had the pleasure of meeting some extended family members too, who all were very sweet and welcoming. She ended up trusting me a little bit, like after we got to talk to each other for a little while. And I was just insistent on her and Carlos going and getting a night's sleep. They'd been at the hospital, no sleep, and all this stuff. And she actually did it. She and Carlos actually went to the hotel. And they trusted me with his care overnight so I could advocate for him if necessary. I mean, I barely knew this woman, and she trusted me with her son's care. And that was Debbie. That was her. She was elegant. She was fair. She was a great advice giver. And when I would call her and complain about Shannon,
She loved you more. I know this.
Sorry. So anyway, that's my experience with Deborah. I miss her dearly. I feel her here. I hope you all do. And she'll always be my mama. Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Okay, so now we will have Bobby Platt, who's the brother-in-law of Carlos and Deborah, and he'll be reading the written eulogies.
I didn't know I was going to read these until a while ago. But she said she had told me earlier. But I'm gonna read them fast. Deborah had several nicknames. Debbie. Beloved Carlos called her Georgia. She was mom and a very devoted mother to her grandchildren who loved her so much she was Tata. Princess was a nickname her sisters gave her. That nickname fit her as she conducted herself regally and royally. Deborah was beautiful and always dressed fit to kill. She was gracious, calm, and had a sweet, welcoming presence. She had a dazzling smile for everyone, and she loved to laugh. Deborah was a great encourager and a friend. She will be remembered as a godly woman who had a big heart and was dearly loved by her family and friends. To know her was to love her. Deborah, beloved Georgia, mom, Tata, and friend, is now headed and in the presence of Jesus. Until we see you again in heaven, Princess, you will be greatly missed. Oh. Oh. Can y'all hear me? My wife says I talk too loud all the time. So. The last one is for Carlos and Kathy. Carlos's daughter wrote this. Dad loved to party. Well, how I know that. And he was the life of the party. He had a big smile, good laugh, and a heart as big as Texas. He was the most generous man I've ever been around, and that's a fact. You can ask some of his friends. If we went out, I'm not supposed to say that. I'm reading. He was the most generous man I know, giving of his money, his time, and his love. Dad always made sure to tell people he loved them and to say encouraging things like, I'm proud of you, and you're doing a good job. I will miss the funny facial expressions he would make and his big hugs. Holidays and birthdays will not be the same without Dad and Debbie to celebrate with them. There'll be a hole in my heart till we meet again. I have an allergy. My nose is running.
Got you chopped onions.
Next, we'll have the eulogy for Carlos by his good friend Steve.
I thought you just, no,
This is
that's the moment.
Can you hear me in the back? I'm honored to have been asked to say a few words about the Carlos Gutierrez that I knew. He was my friend. I miss him. I met Carlos in 1974 when we both worked at NDC. He called me Steve-O. I also met Debbie at NDC also. Bigger than life. Carlos was bigger than life. Physically, he was a big man. His presence and personality filled the room when he entered. And he lived the life with gusto, as they say in Spanish. He embraced life with both arms. Carlos was spontaneous, he was loyal and caring. He was always ready for a new adventure, and I was always up for anything. That's probably a big part of why we got along so well. We had a lot of fun. Vincent's seafood restaurant was the scene of many gatherings. Oysters on the half shell were always on the table, until one time when we got some bad oysters. That night, Carlos called me to ask me how I felt. And one of the guys felt so bad that he went to the hospital. We didn't eat oysters for years. Spontaneous. If you look in the dictionary, you may find Carlos' picture next to the definition of spontaneous. Carlos would call me to see if it was a good time to stop by and visit, but I would tell him sure, and there'd be a knock on the door. He was at the door when he made the call. He did this many times. Las Vegas. On some Friday evenings, I remember that Carlos had a game that he liked to play. It was, can we make it to DFW in time to catch the flight to Las Vegas? He would wait until about 30 minutes before departure time, then we would leave for the airport. We did not even have tickets, and sometimes I would be running at the gate just before the doors were shut on the plane. We always made it, and we would gamble all night and take the flight back the next day for DFW. Bachman Lake. Carlos would surprise me sometimes by the things that he would want to do. One time we were near Bachman Lake and he suggested that we go roller skating around the lake. He was not a roller skater. He fell down many times. Scuba diving. Thinking back, Carlos and I traveled quite a bit together, sometimes with families, sometimes in a group, sometimes with the two of us. On our first diving trip, we went to Cozumel, Mexico in the summer of '78. We had a great time. On a later trip to Cozumel, Carlos and I went diving on our own without a guide. We were diving in a lagoon and discovered a cave. The cave, which connected the lagoon to the open sea, was not very big in diameter, but we went anyway. Our tanks kept hitting the top of the cave, and we had some laughs about that later. On another trip to Cozumel, and another dive that Carlos and I did together was a night dive. You see the different sea creatures at night versus the day dive. Night diving is the darkest possible, and you don't want to get too far apart. Carlos, not having a dive flashlight, but I did. He followed me so close that he said later that I was hitting him in the head with my flippers. We had some more laughs about that one. Fishing trips. I also remember being with Carlos on fishing trips, deep sea in the Gulf of Mexico, bay fishing on the Texas Gulf Shore, and in Canada, as well as Cozumel. In Canada, we had to take a ferry from Vancouver to Vancouver Island, then drive across the island on logging roads to the Pacific Ocean to fish. We were fascinated by the many bears we saw along the way. The fishing guide gave